What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Snowcast Sports Talk, episode 6. Guys, we got our second guest here, someone who I'm very excited to have, the one and only Football Grump. Grump, thank you for being here, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here. Talk some Giants football, talk some whatever you want.
Heck yeah. So, I wanted to start with, I actually met Grump. So a lot of the guests I'm having on the Snowcast to begin with here are people I actually got the opportunity to meet when I went to the Giants game back last year in November. And so just a quick short story. I'm with Justin from Talkin' Giants and the Entertainer, and then Grump takes a picture of us together and sends it to me. I'm driving home, and then I realize Grump has a podcast with it's your cousin, right?
Yeah, it's my second cousin.
And so I start listening to it, and the first thing I gotta say is, I'm bummed out I didn't get a picture with you.
That's all right. I'm there will be many more games. There will be pictures. We can always Photoshop ourselves together too. In the meantime,
that's what we have to do. I told Tana that was the last game the Giants won, was the one we all went to.
Oh shit, you're right. Wow, that's crazy and depressing.
Yeah, I don't know. I was telling Tana too. I remember the play Jones got hurt right on that first quarter when he ran.
It was like the second play of the game, wasn't it?
You're damn right. And I remember watching him run in like he's a freaking running back right into a bunch of guys. And everyone around me goes, ooh. And I look at my girlfriend and I'm like, he's hurt. And next day I'm come home from work. Daniel Jones, neck injury, could miss the rest of the season. I'm like, of course.
Yeah, I think I remember having like a similar reaction where it was just like, because it's not that he got hit incredibly hard. It just looked awkward, like he was just kind of bent strange, and he kind of got up a little. He didn't really jump up and bounce around, I don't think, afterwards. But he went through and he played the rest of the game, and he played well. So I forgot about it kind of immediately. So I was surprised to hear the injury news when it became public.
It was such a bummer. It was such a bummer. And we'll get into all of I think him getting hurt peeled back the layers of all the things wrong with the Giants. I think if you hate or love him, I understand both points. I don't know. I see you on Twitter all the time posting different things. And I post, and I'm always like, I have good and bad opinions of Jones, but he was kind of holding that team together right before, shit hit the fan after he was out. Hit the fan.
Well, any team that look, you're absolutely right. Daniel Jones' injury was the magnifying glass that really that revealed all of the problems that were there. Whether it was Dave Gettleman or Joe Judge or just the salary cap, whatever it was, all of those problems were just so blatantly obvious once Daniel Jones wasn't back there. Because Mike Glennon is your standard average backup quarterback, posting career lows in every statistical category in this offense. There were problems aplenty. And as far as Daniel Jones goes as a player, what we see from him when he has the pieces around him is a very, very capable, functional, dangerous quarterback. But what we see when the pieces aren't there is that he doesn't have the ability to make magic happen the way a Russell Wilson can. And that's okay, because the Russell Wilsons of the world, they're rare. We don't get Russell Wilsons all the time. That's why they are who they are, and why they cost so much money, when they get traded or whatever, right? So as far as Jones goes, I can totally understand moving on from him the same way as I could totally understand him having a good year and wanting to stick with him. And it's really a shame to him that the Giants have done him no favors whatsoever since he was drafted.
Yeah, I said in my last episode, I loved when the owner came out, and I have my problems with John Mara, believe me, but I appreciated his press conference when they asked him, is this the lowest you've ever felt as the owner of the Giants? And he accepted that. And then when he said, we've done nothing to help this kid, we've just screwed him up. So, I appreciated those comments. If Jones is a good quarterback or not, I think we can all agree as a community we didn't help him. You know what I'm saying?
He got booed on draft night. He got booed throwing out the first pitch at Yankee Stadium. Quite literally nothing. From the moment his name was connected to the Giants, he was done no favors. And to your point about John Mara's press conference, I think you and I might be some of the very few people that I appreciated his candor as well. I thought it took guts for him to go up there and face face the music, and he had to give those honest answers, and I felt like they were pretty honest answers about how he felt about the team, whatever. Now, I understand that the press conference was somewhat controlled by Giants PR or whatever, but nevertheless, he still had to go up there and face the questions. And the question, the answer that you said is the one that resonated with me as well. He's, is this the lowest you ever felt about the team? And he said, I would have to say yes. And I thought that was a very honest, it might have been a moment where he really thought about it for the first time, it felt like.
Yeah, after he said that, I actually had a lot of hope for this offseason, because him saying that to me, it felt like an admission of, okay, maybe the way I'm doing things isn't working. And then I was like, okay, he just owned up to the hardest thing an owner has to answer. I now have more faith he might get the GM right, he might get the head coach right, and yeah, it's I was happy with it, so.
Yeah, and you can feel one of two ways about it, right? Like, you can feel like, okay, I have screwed this up. We need a full reset, whatever. And that would be the hopeful outlook. The less hopeful one, the one that I'm fearful of, is that he feels like he's delegated to the wrong people and needs to do things himself. Now, so far, it doesn't look like that's been the case, but these stories come out much, much later.
Yep.
We hear things, so
we'll see.
We'll wait and see. But so far, I'm feeling pretty optimistic.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the stuff I wanted to go over, guys, having Grump on here, when I have a guest on, really what what I really want to get to know more about is, not just their football beliefs and, how they feel about the team, but also, how they got into YouTube and podcasting. So for anyone who doesn't know, Grump has a podcast called Just Giants, the best damn podcast for the best damn team. I love that. I love that opening. And he does it with his cousin, the Cranky Fan.
Yes.
So I wanted to dig into that a little bit. So, starting with just being a Giants fan, when did you get into watching the Giants, and how long have you been a Giants fan for?
Oh, man. Football for me. I am the only boy in my immediate family. In general, my family is mostly female. So from a very young age, my parents tried to keep me out of trouble, keep me away from like drugs and bad situations. I played every sport. I played everything. I played baseball all year. I played fall baseball, spring and summer baseball. So I was in tons of different leagues. I played roller hockey. I don't like the cold, so ice hockey was out of the question. Also, getting ice time as a kid is just an impossibility.
Yep.
But my mom is a retired emergency room nurse. And so football was out of the question. But the story is, in the town that I grew up, there's like one municipal field area where there's like 3 baseball fields, a soccer field, and there's a football field. And when I was a little kid, my sister was playing softball, and I had, I guess, wandered off on my own, and I was watching Pee Wee football, and I grabbed my dad by the hand and I walked him over and I told him I wanted to play this. So my parents had to hash it out, and they signed me up for football, and I played up until about high school. I didn't play high school ball. Whatever. Puberty, different things. I just kind of got away from sports, but I was a Giants fan all through, my youth. I grew up in the Dave Brown years. I was born in 87, so I'm 34. Most of my memories of the Giants team as a kid were terrible. I mean, pathetic. But I always, every time when we were picking our numbers for Pee Wee, I was picking Danny Cannell's number. I had Dave Brown's number of my own. I was a backup quarterback. I was a wide receiver and running back. But I was such an avid Giants fan, and I kind of fell off a little bit, even around that 2000s era, just because, high school life, different things. But I was around for that like 05, 06, 07. And of course 07 will bring anyone right back into the fold, and
Yep.
That was right around the time I was finishing college, so I had a lot more free time finally. And my family, sorry, this is a bit of a winded answer, isn't it?
No. You're good.
Me and the Cranky Fans extended family is very, very large. We are second cousins, so that means our grandfathers are brothers.
Yep.
And our grandfathers are, one of 6 kids. They had 6 kids. So like it's a huge, huge family. So I didn't even know him that well up until this point, and we really connected at my older sister's wedding, which was like a destination wedding. My aunt was just like, he has season tickets, right? So then we started talking, and he was just like, kind of like, I don't really, my wife will come with me, but seems like you would enjoy it more. And we just kind of connected like that. And, my group of friends weren't really sports fans, weren't really football fans. I was kind of on my own with that because when I dropped off of playing sports, most of those friends stayed playing sports and they became closer, and I kind of grew more distant. So I had no one to talk to, and all of a sudden I had this cousin, so I was texting him every day like, "Oh, what do you think about this guy? Or maybe we could draft this dude." And it's an all year thing being a football fan, right? Like the off season is just as important as regular season. And it got to the point where I think I was just annoying him, and he was like, we should just start a podcast. We should just do it like this. And we did it audio only following the 2016 season, and it felt like a good time to do it because they had made the playoffs. They were making a lot of noise. It looked like that Eli Manning, twilight. He was going to ride into the sunset with another, playoff push. They were really building something. But what was interesting about that is that I was on Giants Twitter, and I was just like, guys, there's serious problems with this offense. I mean, they're winning games, but they're winning games 17-14.
Yep.
It's really the defense holding it down. This offense doesn't score points. And so it got to this point where it felt like we wanted to start a podcast to really have these real discussions and not just be full of hope and the immediate results and more the long-term stuff. And of course, 2017,
you were right.
2017 was an utter disaster. It was really, honestly, hard to do a podcast for the first time with no experience and just only reporting the worst news week after week after week. And it's kind of been that way ever since. This last year was the first time we really made the big step into YouTube. It was kind of, I was kind of avoiding it because YouTube is its whole other thing where I was a little scared of how, I don't know. When it's a sports podcast, it's a very niche market, and I felt like they're not really going to care about anything but the information that we're talking about. But once it's on YouTube, it feels very, very, very public. Like anyone could stumble across this page if they're not football fans, if they're not Giants fans, and I'm going to look like this huge doofus. And there was whatever. So I had been putting it off for a long time, and it's also a ton more work than just straight up audio. But
238 episodes to be exact. I was going to ask.
yeah. Like I said, we had been doing it for years and years. YouTube was really only this last season, and we were trying all sorts of different things where, I was trying to do episodes that were not just a podcast. It was just me kind of breaking down the drive of the week. And I thought that would be a really cool segment. And I was doing it for a while. But once we were irrelevant, I mean, what is the drive of the week when Jake Fromm is at quarterback? You know what I mean? So it just became like a wash. So still trying out different things, but I've really enjoyed, the way people have gathered around us. It was far more people listen to us than I ever really expected, because it just, like I said, the nature of how this, like the genesis of the podcast is just so random. Like we just kind of fell into it.
Yeah, and the thing is too, for anyone, we'll have the links down below for all the Just Giants podcast links. You guys are all over the place when it comes to, where people want to consume, and I actually really admire that because I know that back end work. So, for example, the Snowcast is just on YouTube and Spotify. You guys are on Apple Podcast. You guys are on Spotify. You guys are on SoundCloud. You guys are on YouTube. You guys are on iTunes. Like, you guys are on all these different ones. So if you actually watch Just Giants, they have all the images above of where they're showing their podcast. That's a ton of work. And then to top it off, like you just said, you're also doing these side segments. And like you said too, the YouTube side is actually a lot of work because you got to get the graphics, you got to render the videos. The upload time's like an hour. As you know, uploading a YouTube video that's 50 minutes on YouTube, that's a lot of time. So
yeah, so basically to combat that, the best way for us to do it is for me to schedule the upload time from the night before. So that means I don't sleep, is basically what we're having a roundabout conversation about how I don't sleep at night. It's a ton of work doing the YouTube stuff, and especially now where we're doing like the draft prospects, I'm trying to like clip in videos of the guys I'm talking about. to make it as interesting as possible, because just looking at two people talking about something and describing something seems kind of silly if you can have some watchability right next to it, right? But that is adding, that's
Tons
like a
of
whole
work.
extra days of work. That's
Yep.
a whole extra day of work.
So for anyone who doesn't know, you got to take the video, put it into a video editing software, add in the other video, and then you have to re-render the whole thing before you put it up into YouTube. So it doubles the work. I know if you look on just this channel, I started breaking things up into segments. So I would take like my 6 segments, excuse me, and break it up. But I was like, good God, rendering 6 extra videos, uploading them, thumbnails for them, titles, everything else. It's a ton of work. So I appreciate it. It's not easy.
No, it's not easy at all, but there's many of us out there. We're all busting our humps trying to put out the best content that we all can. And by the way, the Giants community has some of the best podcasts around. And I'm not saying that to be like a total homer. I don't know that they are the absolute best, but some of the best and the most variety. I try my best to listen to the week's opponents podcast, the best ones that I can find, just to see what they're saying and get the insight, because I don't have time to really dig into an AFC South opponent that we play every 4 years. I'm not that into their roster and who's injured and who's not performing this year but was expected to. So that's how I do that. And there are some teams, like, the best podcast sucks. Like, really, like, objectively, is like the audio quality is bad. Some of the information seems outdated. Like, Giants fans, you guys are a little spoiled with the amount of content and the quality of content that's out there for us.
And that's even, I just started this podcast about a month ago, and that was honestly one of my deterrents for a long time was, dang, like, I listen to 6 different ones a week. And you're absolutely right, too, about other communities maybe not having as a robust community of podcasts being created, and also with like different angles and different video formats. You have someone like yourself and Cranky Fan, who you guys release these 50-minute, like, and I personally love them because I listen at work, so I'm like, 50 minutes, perfect, this is great. But then you have someone like maybe Bad Dog or The Entertainer, who do these like 15-minute on time, like, right when the news breaks. But it's like we're spoiled by that because we get all these different ways we can consume the media. Yeah, it's a really good point. And, one of the things I wanted to ask, too, is you and Cranky Fan, you guys have seen some, you guys have had this podcast going now for almost 250, maybe even over 250 episodes, and you guys have seen some success. Does, like, your family now know kind of how your podcast is doing? Are they involved? And are they like, dang, like, you guys are killing it? Like, or is it more of like a detachment? Like, for me, my family thinks it maybe is a little silly, and they're like, still kind of wrapping their head around it. Like, oh, you're doing a podcast. Oh, what is that? So, I always ask.
My family is not particularly computer literate, my immediate family. So, like, my parents understand that there's a podcast. They understand that it's on YouTube. They're subscribed. My dad will occasionally listen, when he remembers that, like, it's a weekly thing or whatever, which doesn't stop him from asking the same questions that I've already answered, week after week. But for the most part, my family is not super duper involved. They understand. And starting out a podcast always sounds silly to an outsider because anyone can do it, means that there's tons of people that do it and don't do the greatest jobs, and it doesn't do anything. And for a long time, it felt for me like I was wasting my own time because it was like, nobody cares, nobody's listening, like, whatever. But it seems silly until it's not, right? And we saw success mainly because we had a huge boost in success because of the Talking Giants channel. They do a lot of work to help out other channels and small little bumps. Bobby and Justin have been so great to us, and including us. I mean, I got invited down to work with them at the Senior Bowl, all sorts of things that have exposed us more and more and more and helped us grow. Where, maybe it was kind of silly before then, but now there is some traction and people do listen all the time and want opinions and ask. So it's silly until it's not. And if you're having fun, nothing is silly.
Yeah, I love that answer. And yeah, I'm totally with you, and I'm very much in the same boat. Like, my brothers want to be involved and are interested, and my family, I send it to them sometimes. I'm like, hey, let me know what you think. But yeah, like you said, it's always a little bit silly at first, but as long as you grind and you're passionate about it, it translates. So that's awesome. And I love too, I just want to circle back around to, you and your second cousin didn't really know each other that well until you were kind of connected through football. And now you guys have this podcast together. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of strange to even say, like, the family is just so huge. When you walk into like a Christmas party or whatever, there's no way to have like a real, truly deep, intimate conversation with every single person all the time. And of course, like, there's the giant Christmas party where everyone's invited, and then there's the smaller things. So like, obviously there's cousins that I grew up much, much closer to because I saw them more frequently. So you go to these big gatherings, and those are the people you're generally hanging out with because you're already closer with them. So we were just kind of distant because it was a big thing. And then we had this connection. He was pretty much the only one that was a football fan that had the level of, I guess, passion, right? To follow football all through its off season and not just kind of when the games were happening.
Awesome.
It's a little weird, but it's cool.
No, yeah, for sure. When you find someone who knows all the draft prospects and where the Giants are picking, it's like kind of like a kindred soul, finding a kindred soul. Like, oh, hey, I definitely, I'm with you there. When I meet people that know that much as well, it's always cool. That's why I like having people on because, my girlfriend's really into it, but she doesn't follow the offseason super much. And then both my brothers aren't Giants fans. So, I'll have them on and they want to talk about, the bigger stories. I'm like, what about Evan Neal and Eki Ekwonu, though? Come on, let's break into it. So, no, I like that. That's awesome. I had this as a topic, and then I listened to your guys' newest episode. You were talking a little bit about it. I like to ask, podcasters and stuff, who's their favorite sports channel talk show that they watch? And not like, I watch Talkin' Giants and I watch you guys and I'll watch the Entertainer and stuff like that. But like, I asked Tana as well on TV, like, I'm gonna own this one because everyone hates Skip Bayless. I don't mind Skip Bayless. I don't take his opinions as fact. Like, he knows jack squat about the Giants. Like, when he talks about the Giants, I start laughing. But I just think he's so funny. Like, I appreciate the humor side of it. But I wanted to ask, who's your guilty pleasure you listen to that people might be like, oh, that guy?
Who's my guilty pleasure that I listen to? I don't know. I have tuned out a lot of the mass media NFL stuff because it is far less informative. And it's just like one of those things where I just don't have a ton of time to hear what I already know. And that's what, like, a lot of the major, outlets, they only have like the Cliff's Notes version of everything, which is like, if I've already paid attention, like, I kind of know the Cliff's Notes, I want the details. I don't know that I have like a guilty pleasure, but I will tell you that Skip Bayless is one of like maybe 5 Twitter accounts I have blocked. But it's not because I hate him. I understand what Skip is. Skip is entertainment, and it is intentional discourse to get a conversation started. And the only downside with that is that it's very forced at times and it becomes hokey. And that's fine. I don't really care. But the Twitter account is blocked mainly because everybody interacting with whatever clip or whatever comment he's saying don't know what he is. And they think it's very legitimate. And so I can't deal with seeing it pop up on my Twitter because it's not Skip that I'm dealing with, it's the people who don't understand and are getting legitimately triggered by something that is designed to get you triggered. Like Baker and it's very obvious. Yeah, exactly. I don't when people like post clickbait, I never call it out as clickbait. I just completely ignore it. I just don't have the time to really get into that. So the Skips of the world and stuff, and I'm one of those people who cut my cable. Mm-hmm. I don't really watch TV as much. I have Hulu Live is really how I watch games that I can't attend. Yep. And that's it. That's all I really end up watching. So, I don't know that it's a guilty pleasure, but I just enjoy listening to him talk about stuff, and it's Rich Eisen. I don't feel guilty about it at all, but I think he's such a good host about everything.
He is. I like Rich Eisen a lot, and I love the draft thing he does when he runs with the jacket and stuff. I saw Just Giants one too. I think it was Snacks. He reminded me of Rich Eisen with the gray jacket doing the 40-meter dash. I almost commented, I'm like, Rich Eisen-esque here.
Yeah. You know what? He got a lot of flack for falling over, but considering the outfit he decided to wear to run a 40-yard dash in, I thought that was a pretty good effort, and I didn't think it's faster than I could have done in that outfit.
I would agree. That jacket was a fit. It was a fit jacket. So you're already losing like that aerodynamic factor.
Oh yeah, he's getting all this drag and stuff.
Yeah, no, I only respect. No hate. No hate. But yeah, I'm definitely with you. I think I'll like consume it on YouTube, like in like the 10-minute clips. And I am going to give Skip his credit here. My favorite thing about him is he's a Cowboys fan who talks the most shit about the Cowboys. Like every episode I watch him, he's like, yeah, they're awful. Mike McCarthy's awful. Dak is getting paid too much. And I'm like, he likes the Cowboys, and kind of leads to another point I'm always interested in. I don't mind, like, Eagles fans to me are the most repulsive. Like, when I talk to an Eagles fan, like when we went to the game, the Eagles fans in MetLife, oh my God, some of them were intolerable. When I see a Cowboys fan, we just both kind of flick each other the bird and then laugh, and we're like, haha.
Okay, so I've had this debate with the Cranky fan before. I think we had an episode about it where we were trying to decide what is the bigger rivalry. And this stems into like a whole other separate thing where
It's a deep history. It's a deep history between these teams.
So to me, the stronger rivalry is Philadelphia.
Yep.
And I think the geography plays into it because I'm not sure where you're located, but I'm in Morris County, New Jersey, and I've always been in Morris County, New Jersey in different spots. And that's like dead center of North Jersey. And I have slowly over the years watched Eagles stickers show up more and more on cars and parking lots.
Oh boy.
Eagles gear at the local Walmart. And you know, that stuff, that's demographics. They do research to know that things will sell wherever. So I live amongst Eagles fans in neutral ground, I would say. You know, Morris County, New Jersey, I think I'm like 25 minutes from the stadium.
Yep.
I'm not far. So like, get off my lawn, kind of. So like, I'm constantly around. I work with some Eagles fans. You know, I see them everywhere. Now, I will say, the Cowboys fans in Jersey don't bother me as much, and it's because they are mostly front runners. Yeah. Cowboys fans in Jersey are Duke Blue Devil fans for basketball. They are LeBron James fans. They are Yankee fans. They are the fans of teams that do well consistently, and they only show up when that team is doing well. So, I mean, I was with Cranky in 2011. We went to every regular season home game for that season. Dang. And the one playoff game. So that was a very special year for me because I really got to ride that season out, and it was such a magical year. But we were at that week 17 game at home against Dallas, winning in. And we were it was, I want to say close to like a 60-40 crowd. Like there were a lot of Cowboys fans there. They didn't know anything though. They had no idea, and their team was what they were like 13-3 that year.
Good year for them. Yeah, they were good.
Were incredible. That was a year to know everything, and the people around us didn't know anything. They didn't know anybody except for the star players. So they don't bother me as much because they're mostly idiots. And whatever. I've gone to Arlington, Texas. I went to a home game in Dallas in 2019.
Okay.
And the fans down there are much more timid, I would say. Some of them were kind of dumb, but they're much more involved in like college. Down there. So like there's a lot of like Texas Tech rivalry, Texas A&M rivalry. Those guys. Saturday down there is much more passionate than Sunday. And I'm not saying that they're not passionate fans, but they're more in tune with their colleges down there, and they know what's going on. They were much more. I mean, I went down there into enemy territory and didn't feel like anyone was gonna bust my balls, you know. So it was, to me, it's the Eagles fans, and that is the stronger rivalry.
Yep, and also, too, the Eagles have obviously burned us, I think, more in our past. Well, we've kind of had the Cowboys number. I know recently, like, regular season, the Cowboys have kind of owned us. But, like, when you look at the 2007 and the 2011, you know, Super Bowl runs, I mean, we got the better of the Cowboys both times in the playoffs. So, you know, I think...
And in 2008, it was the Eagles that knocked us off in the first round of the playoffs. And that was one of the best Giants teams that I had ever seen in my lifetime, was that 2008 team.
Yep, exactly. So I think maybe Giants fans hold on a little bit to the Eagles as well because of that. rivalry. I live in Massachusetts, so I'm amongst Patriots fans. But Patriots fans and Giants fans can relate that we all hate the Eagles because the Eagles beat them in 17. So Patriots fans, like whenever I see one, I got pizza the other day. I was wearing a Giants shirt and he was wearing a Patriots shirt. And I'm like, screw the Eagles, right? He goes, screw the Eagles. Got my pizza. So we just kind of look at each other, point, okay.
That was a particularly brutal Super Bowl that I think I only watched like 2 quarters of. I was just so disgusted with the entire situation of the Eagles Patriots. I just like I don't want to watch this at all.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I always tell New England people give me a hard time and they're like, Giants suck. I'm like, yeah, okay, but we did beat you twice. And then they're like, oh, you got lucky. I'm like, yeah, okay. I'm like, but you know what? I can admit Belichick's probably the greatest coach of all time, and Brady's probably the greatest quarterback of all time. Like, I give them their respect. I'm not like a Patriots hater, Belichick was with the Giants in '90. It's like I love Belichick. Good for him. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's one that I don't really understand, and it's probably because I'm not really involved in other sports. So that whole Boston, New York thing, I don't have one of those. I don't have that. And since the Patriots aren't even in our conference, they mean nothing to me, really. I have no real strong... Damn it, Brady himself, I don't really like Tom Brady.
You must have been bummed he came out of retirement.
Yeah, I don't really care anymore. At this point, I kind of understand what he is, and if he's not surrounded by a really good offense, he's only going to come back year after year if he's in the perfect situation.
Yeah, of course.
So
yeah, but I think
whatever.
Yeah, I think the thing I love about Brady, my little brother is just like the biggest Tom Brady fan. So I hear that the thing, if you take a Brady and put him next to Aaron Rodgers, I just appreciate Brady's leadership and intangibles because I think he pulls a lot out of the team. Where I'll never forget when they played Rodgers and Brady in the NFC Championship Bucks Packers a couple years ago, and Aaron Rodgers looked at his team while they were losing like a disappointed father. Well, when you watch Brady mic'd up, hate or love him, the guy inspires people to play better. So. But I do agree. He needs a lot, especially he's 45. So
yeah, I mean that's really it. It's just at this point he's not going to be in a situation where he's running for his life. And quite frankly, he's not going to. He'll just go down. He's not going to get hit and take anything unnecessary. He doesn't need to. But you're 100% right about the key difference between Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady is that leadership ability. And not to say Aaron Rodgers is a poor leader, but Tom Brady is just made out of something completely different. He's just completely a unicorn that comes around truly once a generation, not this generational term that we use every year.
Yeah, every year there's a generational player.
Yeah, but Tom Brady is truly a once in a generation. No one, there won't be another guy like that for some time.
But see, I think, if my brother were to talk to you, he'd completely respect you not liking him, but appreciating those factors of him. You know what I'm saying? People can hate him. He's a pain in the ass.
I mean, I don't hate him. It's so much as he's top dog. So I always want to see him fall because he's not on my team. I'm sick of seeing the same team win all the time. So my choices for that Super Bowl were the team that always wins and the guy that always wins, or the team that I hate the most.
True, yeah.
Those were my choices.
Yeah, to be honest, I was rooting for the Pats. I don't care. The Eagles just have a different hatred.
I absolutely was rooting for the Pats. I just
but it
didn't
hurts.
want to watch it.
It hurts though, yeah. All right, well let's talk about the Giants because we talked about it a little bit at the beginning here. I think they're moving in the right direction. I kind of want to start with this offseason. You had a tweet. I actually took a note on it here, and you said the word depth. And you said, what Joe Schoen has been doing this offseason has been building some depth around the team. I talk about it every episode. You guys talk about it. We're so strapped for money. It's not like we can go out there and have these huge free agent signings. But I got to give it to Joe Schoen. I know we're still tight on cash. I know Bradbury, unless something changed since the 25 minutes we started recording here, the Bradbury move hasn't happened, but I'm actually really happy with this offseason. I think it's been sneaky good for the Giants, and I feel like they've built some decent depth on the team. Not amazing, but they're starting to put some pieces around that I think can help.
Well, I mean, you absolutely nailed it. This is a tough offseason, and I feel good about it thus far. So far, the only thing that's gotten me scratching my head has been the Logan Ryan move. But otherwise, everything else kind of makes... But it's a tough offseason. I mean, I haven't had to endure an offseason coming off of a terrible year where we also have to hack off $50 million worth of talent. You know what I mean? So it's a tough ask, and it's not there's no way to get through this offseason and just be great. They might even be a worse team to start out the year next year, depending on how injuries shake out, whatever. But what they've done now, I mean, this is a team now when you make the money to get underneath the cap, you have holes at almost every single level at a starter position. I mean, we need a new safety. We need a starter at corner, probably, but definitely depth there. You know, barring what happens with Bradbury, it's almost assured that he's going to be gone. So, I mean, we're probably going to need a new starting corner. We're going to need a new starter at linebacker. We need a new starter at edge. We've always needed one. We probably need a new starter on the defensive line, as Austin Johnson is gone now. And then you flip to the other side. They need 4 starters on the offensive line. They're probably okay at wide receiver. They need at least 1 starter at tight end. You know, so what Joe Schoen has done is given out minimum contracts to guys that are depth level players, but if they had to be a starter, they wouldn't be a total complete embarrassment. So what that does is it allows them the flexibility in the draft to get the most impactful players. They're not pigeonholed right now into, like, they don't need to get a safety in the draft this year. They can roll with Julian Love and Xavier McKinney. It's not ideal, right? But if the choice is to take the 8th best safety or the absolute best middle linebacker, and those guys are on your board, they're not forced to take this 8th best safety because they have a depth level guy that can come in and be a starter. They can take the better talent and make the whole team better. And they have pretty much done that everywhere, including that 4-starter void on the offensive line. They've went out and got as many guys as they could to fill it. Now, obviously, when we talk about like Matt Gano or whatever, he shouldn't be starting. That can't happen. But Feliciano, right, is one of those guys that maybe he's a starter. He's definitely not definitely a starter. So if he's the worst guy that's starting on the offensive line, it's not the end of the world. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
they're not forced to draft a center to replace Feliciano and make him depth. He can be the starter this year. So it allows them this room to wiggle in the draft and be as impactful as possible right off the bat. And truly, when you're building a team, that's the way you've got to do it, is using free agency to get the 1 or 2 star players you need and to re-sign your guys that you want to be the building blocks, and then really just using that money for depth and building through the draft.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to combine a few topics here because I think I'm on the outskirts of the Giants community here, and it comes with safety Kyle Hamilton, where we're seeing a lot of people love this guy. And I saw a tweet yesterday, and they made the comment like something like best player available is the better. It never screws you. Like going best player available. So let's say Hamilton's at 5 or 7. And I personally couldn't disagree with that more. Like I am so burned by the Saquon pick at number 2, where I thought at the time Saquon was obviously the best player available, and the Giants I think did too. I do agree going into free agency we can kind of get those pieces so we can pick the best players, but I still think right tackle, cornerback, and edge, even if maybe they're not at the skill level. And you can disagree with me here, by the way. I'm totally fine with it. I think the skill level gap, even if it's like, let's say Sauce Gardner and Kyle Hamilton, I would prefer a Sauce Gardner because that cornerback position is so much more important to us.
All right. Well, this is kind of a multi-level thing here.
Yeah, I just...
I'll start with this. To me, Kyle Hamilton is a really good player.
Yep.
That is a total luxury for this team.
Yep.
And I've seen people say that he's the best player in this draft, and I could not disagree with that more.
Yep,
I mean,
agreed.
right off the bat, I do not agree with that. And how you can come away and not say that Aiden Hutchinson, who to me looks like the next J.J. Watt, is not the best player in this draft, I don't understand. But I like to preface everything with I have no formal training in any.
Me
of the
neither,
things,
my
in
friend. Me
opinions.
neither.
Just a total amateur here. So to me, the Kyle Hamilton thing is a little overblown. He's played a little bit all over the place. He's a fantastic player, and if he were on this team, they would be way, way better. As far as choosing a Sauce Gardner over him, I think that I agree with that.
What about a Stingley? What about Stingley over him?
So for me, I have legitimate concerns with all three of what I determined to be the first round corners. Sauce
Me
Gardner
too.
to me looks like he was tested a lot less at Cincinnati. You know, he played opposite a not very good corner, but he also looks a little wild. Like he doesn't really look under control. If you watch Gardner next to Derek Stingley, Stingley looks like the most under control, comfortable, natural corner in this draft to me. There's different questions with him, right? He has an injury problem with, I think, a Liz Frank injury. And also, he quite frankly has an effort problem. And I understand, you know, Gardner's on this potential national championship team, so he has every reason to be putting forth 120% effort. And LSU is in the shitter, and their coach gets fired mid-season for some weird allegations and all this other stuff. So, you know, I can understand the effort level thing here, especially when you know you're a really good player. You're going to the draft. You don't want to risk an injury. And then also Roger McCreary, I think, is a very natural, very gifted cornerback. Probably not as good as those two, but pretty close. But he doesn't have that same length. He's under 6 feet. You know, he doesn't fight as well through block. So all three of them, I would be happy with all three of them because I think they're all first round talents, and they all do things a little differently. I just have a huge fear of drafting corners in the first round.
As a
And
Giants
part of
fan,
that,
I can't imagine why. I'm totally
yeah,
joking.
right. No, but it seems like every year there's just I don't know, and I don't do the numbers on this. I probably should before I really hold this opinion very close to my
I
heart
hold it
the way
with
I
you so
do.
we can die on this bridge together, okay? I know where you're
It
going.
just seems like more corners in the first round bust.
Yep.
And that's like experts. These are professional general managers whiff on corners, and they look like they're going to be studs, and they're just. It just seems to be this 50% hit rate. You compare that to the edge class, like Aiden Hutchinson is not going to bust. Maybe he won't be a all-pro every year the way that we expect or whatever, but he won't be terrible. You know, it seems that the bust rate for other positions is just lower than corner. So if it's me, I like what the Giants did in just buying James Bradbury, buy Adoree Jackson. These are known quantities. Put the money there and draft everywhere else. I'm okay with that. So as far as the corner thing goes, I'm a little afraid to draft Sauce Gardner, if I'm being completely honest, even though I know he's a very good player. But as far as Kyle Hamilton goes, I don't. To me, that's a luxury we can't afford.
I agree.
This is a team now that in the next couple of years just can't screw up the draft. They cannot screw up the draft. So I would be much more comfortable taking the sure thing. You're positive this guy is not going to bust. That's just me.
Yeah, totally. And I am even under the opinion, let's say at 5, one of the 3 linemen, and this is another one that I'm unpopular about, but I don't mind Charles Cross. I know maybe he didn't have the same college system that prepares you for the NFL, but I still think he could be a pretty good right tackle. Let's say you just take a tackle at 5, and at 7, Gardner, Thibodeau, and a couple other of these guys that the Giants need aren't there, and Hamilton's there at 7, I would say trade back because we need that 23 pick for a quarterback the next year. And like you said, Hamilton's a luxury, and a lot of people aren't going to agree with that. A lot of people would say take Hamilton at 7. I just think for me, like you said, it's a luxury pick. I think McKinney and Love can fill there. And this is an even bolder take. I think Aaron Robinson and Adoree Jackson, I don't know if I want to die on this hill because it could come back to bite me in the ass. Okay. But I'm just saying some of these edges like a Jermaine Johnson or a Kayvon Thibodeau, I think they're more surefire. And you know the other thing too is the transition from cornerback in college to cornerback in the NFL is a really tough transition. Like
Definitely.
These guys aren't busts. It's just that transition's a tough transition. And I know Robinson's a slot guy, but I'm just saying that's a tough transition to. Yeah, it's hard. I don't know. You and Cranky Fan talked about being more cautious of the cornerback, and I agree. If it was up to me, O-line and edge. I think those are the 2 spots you go, or O-line and trade back.
I mean, I'm all aboard the O-line and trade back. You absolutely nailed it. They have to get a quarterback. They have to nail down this quarterback situation. They need to know what they have and what they're doing going forward. Now, it's unfortunate that they're in the situation they are where Daniel Jones is now in his 4th year and he's still an unknown. But the fact remains, if you do your work on this, the quarterbacks in this draft suck. They're not going to.
Yep.
I am already, like, Daniel Jones, to me, I'm much more comfortable with Daniel Jones back there than any of the quarterbacks coming out in the draft.
Or Tyrod Taylor for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And Tyrod Taylor, by the way, I've been screaming for Tyrod Taylor to be on this team
I know.
for like the last 3 years now. So I've finally happened. So to me, trading down has to happen because you need that second first-round pick next year to leverage to move up. It needs to happen. I don't think that there is a way that you are going to get the quarterback that you want next year without either losing every single game or having 2 first-round picks. That's just the only way it's going to happen.
Yeah, and I think Jones will do well in Dable's system.
I think Jones is a good quarterback. I have to be honest. In the NFC East, I think he has the best deep ball, the most accurate deep ball. I think that he's probably maybe he's the second best runner. I think that maybe Jalen Hurts is a little bit better because he's good at just being mobile behind the line of scrimmage than Daniel Jones is. But Daniel Jones is a good quarterback. I mean, he's a legitimate starter in this league. And I don't really know what Kenny Pickett's going to do, but I really don't like Malik Willis. Not just for this team, just in general. Look, man, the ceiling is real high, but diving into his tape, I hated him a lot more than I thought I was going to.
What didn't you like, if you don't mind me asking? I don't know anything about him. I couldn't care less about quarterbacks, so I've watched no film.
The footwork is an absolute
mess.
It's
all over the place. Yeah, I've heard that.
The reading the field is an absolute mess. I swear to God, the first play I watched, he was completely locked in. There was a busted coverage. The first play I watched, busted coverage, tight end is screaming down the field, completely uncovered. And he's not even looking. He's not even looking. It was a seam route. It's right down the center of the field, not even looking. So, I mean, like, right off the bat, I was like, oh, shit. He's just going to require a ton of work. Now, it's absolutely possible that he can get everything he can, and to me, his ceiling is Lamar Jackson light. I don't even think he'll ever reach Lamar. And Lamar Jackson has his own critics out there still about throwing the ball. So keep that in mind when I say the best that I think Malik Willis can ever be is still worse than Lamar Jackson. So I don't think Malik Willis's ceiling is top 10.
Yeah.
So, and that's correcting everything that you can about him. That's just my opinion. Again, I'm an amateur, but so that's why I don't like him, is that, you know, even if you correct everything, he's still not going to be a top 10 quarterback. Not saying that Daniel Jones is, it's just he doesn't need to correct nearly as much to be a successful middle of the pack kind of guy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, the question I struggle with is, what does Jones have to do next year to warrant another contract or keeping him around another year? Like, what is Jones, like, for me, Jones, I think, has to win, and this might be high. I think he has to win 2 playoff games if you want to pay him. Maybe 1 playoff game, but this is the way I'm thinking about it, Grump, is the NFC is becoming less and less competitive. And let's say Jones goes into the playoffs and the Vikings are there, and we lose to the Vikings. The Vikings have a good team, but, like, let's say Jones plays like crap. I still don't know if you give him that next contract because he's going to want a lot of money. And, yeah, I don't know. Now I'm thinking in my head, what does it take to trade up to get, you know, a Bryce Young or a CJ, the Ohio State kid?
As long as you have 2 first-round picks, I'm pretty sure you can move up because you can always add in future assets, right? So if it's 2023 and you have 2 first-round picks, say you're picking, you know, we're going to the playoffs according to you or whatever, we lose to Minnesota in the first round, right? In divisional or wild card game, we lose. So what are we drafting there? Like 24, something like that? So that's our spot. And let's just say the other first-round pick that we have is Carolina is a decent, you know, possibility, right? So Carolina is picking, I don't know, let's say 12th or something like that. You package 2 of them together to move to the second. So you throw in some 2024 assets as well. If it's your guy, the quarterback,
there's no price,
no expense. Really, if it's your guy, you're moving up. So I think as long as you have 2 first-round picks, you can leverage in some future assets to move up however much you need.
So what do you need to see from Jones to maybe warrant that second contract? I'm curious.
Well, I think a playoff win is a stretch because I'm not sure that this team is going to be playoff level, and that
fair enough.
Be
That's
his
a good
fault.
point. That's a good point. Yep. Okay.
I don't think that will be his fault, but I think if we see consistent performances from him that resemble that Saints game last year,
Yeah.
where he played very well in that
Very
game.
well. Very well.
Forget the win. Forget the fact that they won the game. That, to me, wins and losses I don't think are going to factor into Daniel Jones this year, because
It's a good point.
The team kind of stinks.
It's a good point.
And they're going to know that, and they need to move forward in the best way possible. So I'll say wins and losses aren't going to affect him right now, but I do think at a certain point, wins are not a quarterback stat, but they have to be factored in. Like, there's a winnability trait to quarterbacks, isn't there?
We even saw it with Daniel Jones in that Saints game. He willed that game at the end. I felt like we were like, oh shit, little old school Eli Manning here, willing that win at the end.
Yeah, and there is some argument to be said about the overtime rules, but if Daniel Jones is such a shitty quarterback, then why were they able to score on their first possession in the overtime and seal that game without the other team even taking the field?
Yep. No.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that is how that went, right? I'm not.
No, you're absolutely. You are.
We won the coin toss. We scored, and that was the end of the game, right?
Jabril's Peppers. We want the effing ball.
Oh yeah, that I actually tweeted something with that, and it went viral. That was one of my favorite screen caps. Is him just
I hope we keep him too. He'd be huge, but.
I thought it was an impossibility. From the moment he got hurt and was out for the year. But now, the way they've been able to bring guys back that were hurt with Blake Martinez, Sterling Shepard, I thought those guys were absolutely gone. Maybe it's possible Jabril Peppers comes back, and he may be one of those guys that re-signs much later on, after the draft, while he tests the market and sees what's available to him.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you, Grump, I'm going to have you back on at some point so we can reassess this Daniel Jones. We'll maybe do a mid-season recap and see, is he the guy or is he not the guy? Because it's a
hell yeah.
I think it's tough right now, and it leads into my last. We have two more quick topics here, but one of the ones the Entertainer did a Twitter conversation. I saw Carl Banks actually joined, and him and Carl Banks got into a disagreement. Not an argument, but the disagreement was Chris's, and I agree with Chris on this, that the Giants probably aren't going to be very competitive next year. Well, Carl Banks thinks the Giants will be competitive next year in a weak NFC East and could actually win some games. I guess, talking about the Jones thing a little bit, what's the expectation for you going in the next season? For the team.
Specifically for the team?
For the team, yeah.
What I want to see from this team is an offense.
Me too.
This sounds like a very basic thing, but this team hasn't had a good offense. Like I said, we started this podcast in 2017, and I highlighted how the 2016 team didn't even have an offense then.
Nope.
It doesn't feel like this team has had a coherent offense, and it's because they've ignored the offensive line wholesale for way too long, and no quarterback has been successful back there because they haven't had time to do anything. So what I want to see is that this team puts the resources in, the work in to improving this offense and scoring points. I think a bad team can still score lots of points. A bad defense, you can lose games while scoring 28 points, and I will feel better about that than winning games. It was only scoring 10 points in the long-term view. Because you're never going to go through the whole playoffs scoring 10, 13 points. You're not going to do it.
You're damn right. That's a good one too. I think for me, it's just improvement around the team, but obviously the offense, I'm excited to see a Brian Dable, Mike Kafka offense.
Yeah. So. And Bobby Johnson for that matter. I want to see what this new offensive line coach can do with what's here. Andrew Thomas has now gone through far too many offensive line coaches. Guy.
And he's still pretty good.
Oh, that was my Jabril Peppers moment. There was when we drafted. I was aching so hard that it would be him. I liked him the best out of all four tackles.
Oh, that's awesome.
I still feel that way. And my girlfriend was in the room, kind of just watching TV while I was on my computer watching the NFL draft, and I just completely was like, yes! It just completely ruined the night by just exploding with anticipation and happiness.
So then, who's your O lineman this draft? Who do you love?
Well, I haven't completed it yet.
Okay.
And there are a lot of really good ones. Just because of the need at tackle, I feel very strongly about Evan Neal.
Yep.
And if he's on the board, you were mentioning Charles Cross, and at 5 or 7, I don't want Cross. But if Cross is the right tackle and we get him at good value in terms of the draft, that's perfectly fine. It's just if Evan Neal is sitting there, having that tandem of Thomas and Neal is so enticing, and it's such a position of need. They cannot leave the draft without a right tackle. It can't happen. So to fill that void with such a talent right there would be incredible. But I mean, I really like guys like Zion Johnson is insane. Kenyon Green, I had highlighted at the beginning of the season. I did a thing on Talking Giants with Bobby where we listed out different players that we were excited to see or whatever. And Kenyon Green was my suggestion as well way back then. There's tons of O-linemen in this draft that I really, really like, and it's unfortunate that we don't have 5 first-round picks.
It's so funny. I had that as a note. I wish we did too, because we have so many needs and there's so many great players when you watch the film. But yeah, Evan Neal and Eki are right there at 1 and 2 for me. Either one of those guys, I will be extremely ecstatic. So I love that.
I will be so happy with that.
Yeah, and I think with Tyreek Hill going to the Dolphins, it wouldn't shock me if the Jets take a cornerback at number 4, which is really enticing to me because then.
Well, I mean, they have a defensive-minded head coach and everything. So
yeah. So I think we could see one of them there. It would really bum me out if Ekwonu and Neal are gone and we take Cross at 5. Even though I do, if we pick Cross, you can hold me to it. I like him. Again, when I have you back on, maybe
you like him more than Trevor Penning.
So I haven't watched a lot of film on Trevor Penning, so I'm not gonna say So I will though. I'll make a note to watch some film on him.
Okay.
The thing I like about Cross, I think he's a very refined pass blocker. So that's just my opinion, but I do know where he went to school. That offense and the way it operated is very different than the NFL. So a lot of people don't think he'll translate well over to the NFL. And maybe Cross, has to work on his, I don't know what his dog mentality. Like when you watch Ekwonu and Neal, those guys want to hurt people. I love it.
And that's actually one of the things I look at for every position. There's low effort, there's high effort, and then there's this other gear of just playing through the whistle. Yeah. And it's at every position. It was one of the things I highlighted about Aaron Robinson that I had him as cornerback 3 last year. I was so excited for him. And part of it is because he is always playing at 120%, like really through the whistle at all times.
Yeah, he had a great rookie year. I was so surprised by him when I was watching him. Like, this kid is good. Maybe that's why I'm a little bit cautious of getting a corner at that high. I think getting one is a good move, but maybe it.
Oh yeah. Well, remember James Bradbury was a 2nd-round pick.
Yeah, of course. Awesome. Well, my final question. So again, I just kind of want to circle back around to this for everyone listening. Like I said. Grump here has a podcast with his cousin, Just Giants, and I meant to ask Chris this, and I want to ask all the people I have on, what's the future plans for the podcast, and what's going on with Just Giants, and do you have any big projects or things you're just working on, or what's the plan for 22?
We are always looking to improve things at all times. So we started doing shows with guests as well on a more consistent basis. So we had Patricia Traina on, we had Chris on. We were kind of at like checkpoints throughout the year, and we wanted to do some other shows that were more round table friendly. So we'd have like 3 or 4, different people on, just kind of rifle through a couple different topics. Even this draft, we're doing different stuff where I am not sleeping. Like truly trying to watch as many players as I can and really, really, really put out quality draft content. So we're going position by position now. With starting the episode with the free agent market and the state of the team, and then the back half going through the draft guys at the different levels, right? The day 1, day 2, and day 3 guys, because there are holes everywhere, you're gonna have to draft everywhere. And I put a lot of, like we were saying before, with like the clips and stuff like that, and trying to put together things in that fashion. As far as the regular season, the way it goes, I wanted to revisit that the defining drive, which was the segment I was doing about like kind of the turning point in the game, and I went through play by play those drives, whether it be on offense or defense. If the team is relevant, I will continue to do that as well, which I only got to do about 5 or 6 of those before I just gave up last year because it was a waste of my time. But we're always looking to improve. So just following along, you might just see some new stuff that I didn't even mention because it's not in the works yet. So, yeah.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, we're right at about time here. So I want to take a moment to just say thank you. When I started the podcast, guys, Grump was the first person first person, I reached out to that I really wanted to have on. So Grump, I appreciate you taking some time and joining us here.
Oh, dude, I'm happy to be here. I will always jump on whenever you want. So
yeah, I'm gonna have you
by
back
all
on.
Means, reach out.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to do check-ins, and we'll have to I think I made some bold claims here. I'll have to write down and track and see how they work out. So,
hey man, stay true to your claims though, because that was a problem I had. I second guessed myself because I'm an amateur, and last year was the first time I really, truly never strayed from my opinions, and Aaron Robinson was one of my top guys, and so was Ellerson Smith. They both became Giants, so just stick to your opinion as much as you can, and if you're wrong, you're wrong. It's okay.
Yep, absolutely. That's what we try to do here. All right, guys, for anyone who's interested in the Just Giants podcast and Cranky Fan and Football Grump, all their links will be down below. Again, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time, everyone. Peace out.